Welcome back to Slack Signal X. Today we're delving into a topic that, over the years, my opinions have changed a lot. As a byproduct of the skate punk scene, with my formidable years being the late 1980s and 90s, straight edge was always there, and as I identified more with the punk scene than the hardcore scene, I spent much of my youth criticizing straight edge kids as not really being part of the real punk scene. As years went by and I gained some life perspective, a respect sort of grew inside of me. Not for the crew pack mentality part of the movement, although I get that. We all grow up in different environments and sometimes you have to find family in unconventional places. But a respect for the discipline it takes to hold edge in a world that wants you to be messed up. A respect for the desire to stay focused and break the cycles that many of us were born into. And for the clarity it provides for true personal and spiritual growth. With that being said, sorry if I made fun of you for being straight edge back then. Unless you were a jocko meathead that just wanted to beat people up. Then I totally meant it. But I digress. Before we do this, please like, subscribe, and don't be a poser. So let me set the stage for you. It's the early 80s. The air is thick with sweat, beer, and this crackling primal energy. Hardcore punk isn't just a sound, it's a pulse. It's an explosion of fists and fury in VFW halls, basements, and overcrowded community centers where every surface tells a story of rebellion. This isn't the sanitized defiance of arena rock or the radio-friendly rebellion of mainstream punk. Hardcore is raw and unfiltered. It's a middle finger to the mainstream, to the excess of hair metal, to the manufactured optimism of Reagan's America. The kids here are outcasts, suburban misfits, urban rejects, working class punks scraping by on little more than sheer will. They have no trust funds, no safety nets, only the promise of a scene that understands their rage and frustration. And in that chaos, something radical begins to form. A group of kids, defiant and clear-eyed, step into the pit. No beer in their hand, no cigarette dangling from their lips, no needle marks on their skin. They're here for a higher purpose, to stay sharp, to stay in control. This is the beginning of straight edge. 1. The birth of the X. Washington, D.C., 1981. Ian MacKaye, thin, intense, and uncompromising, belts out a 2-minute sermon of fury that would forever alter the punk landscape. His song Straight Edge rejects the self-destruction that had long plagued punk culture. I'm a person just like you, but I've got better things to do. At first it was merely a personal choice, a statement of intent, but as word spread, kids disillusioned by rampant drug abuse and self-destruction latched on to the idea. By the mid-80s, straight edge had morphed from a song into a code. A way of life symbolized by a simple yet defiant mark, the X. In DC, clubs would mark underage punks' hands with an X to bar them from buying alcohol. The straight edge kids reclaimed that symbol, transforming it into a badge of honor. Some would merely mark their hands, while others tattooed the X into their skin, a permanent testament to their commitment. 2. Youth crew and the rise of militancy. As the 80s progressed, the movement began to mutate. Enter Youth Crew, a faction that saw bands like Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, and Bold infuse hardcore with a new militant idealism. This wasn't only about abstaining from drugs, it was about cultivating self-control, discipline, and strength, physical, mental, and moral. The lyrics turned from personal mantras into rallying cries: true till death, positive force, straight edge, the only way. For many, these weren't mere words. They were orders in a battle against self-destruction and societal decay. And soon, what began as a personal choice evolved into an all-out war on excess. 3. The dark side of edge. As the straight edge philosophy spread, its message began to fracture. The pure idea of self-discipline twisted into something harder, angrier. Across the country, pockets of the movement turned militant, taking a hardline stance to dangerous extremes. In Boston, the local scene became a crucible of uncompromising ideals. Boston's gritty clubs, often dimly lit and packed with raw energy, hosted a scene where straight edge was enforced with an iron fist. local venues from basement shows in Cambridge to legendary clubs on Lansdowne Street became battlegrounds. Here, purity wasn't just preached, it was policed. In one notorious incident in the early 90s, a heated altercation at a show in downtown Boston erupted when a straight-edge crew confronted a group of punks perceived to be flaunting their vices. The confrontation escalated into a brawl that spilled out into the street, forcing local police intervention. The incident rattled the community and sparked fierce debates about freedom, self-expression, and whether enforcing purity could ever be justified. For many in Boston, the scene became as much about reclaiming their identity as it was about fighting against perceived moral decay. Halfway across the country, in Salt Lake City, a different but equally intense narrative was unfolding. In a city known for its conservative values and strict social codes, the emergence of a militant straight-edge scene was both ironic and incendiary. Salt Lake City's underground hardcore shows took place in hidden basements and repurposed community centers, places where the clash between traditional values and raw punk energy was unavoidable. Local straight-edge groups in Salt Lake City were fiercely protective of their turf. They patrolled the fringes of shows, intervening when someone was suspected of indulging in drugs or alcohol. In one infamous incident, a show spiraled into chaos when a straight-edge crew intercepted a group of outsiders suspected of bringing contraband into a venue. The ensuing clash not only left several people injured, but also ignited a city-wide discussion about vigilantism and the true meaning of personal freedom. For Salt Lake punks, the militant posture was as much a reaction to their environment as it was a statement of purity, a paradox in a city already steeped in its own strict codes. In both Boston and Salt Lake City, the radical edge of the movement exposed a bitter truth. The struggle for purity sometimes led to violence, blurring the line between personal choice and authoritarian control. 4. The mid-90s, a new direction. The 90s ushered in a new sound, a new look, and a fresh mindset. Enter Earth Crisis, a band that would redefine what it meant to be straight edge. They were not just advocating for abstinence, they were demanding environmental stewardship, vegan ethics, and political activism. Their heavy, brutal sound was like a call to arms, a sonic reminder that being straight edge was now as much about global responsibility as it was about personal discipline. This evolution sparked a division. While some embraced the newfound political clarity, others decreed it as dogmatic, a leap from rebellion to self-righteous extremism. Yet amid the debates, the music roared on, each chord a defiant strike against the status quo, each lyric a challenge to a world determined to sedate its anger. 5. Something deeper. By the 2000s, the most overt militancy had largely burned out, replaced by a more introspective, even spiritual approach. Straight edge had grown up. Today, straight edge continues to shape lives, not only through hardcore shows and aggressive music, but also through unexpected channels, metal, hip-hop, yoga, meditation, and Eastern philosophy. For many, the X isn't just a symbol of abstinence. It's a reminder of the choice to wake up in a world designed to numb you, a commitment to staying alert in every sense. The legacy of those turbulent times remains palpable. In Boston, echoes of those brutal altercations and ideological battles still resonate in underground venues and local memory. In Salt Lake City, the spirit of vigilant defiance, tempered over time by introspection and dialogue, continues to inform a community that refuses to be defined by its contradictions. 6. The future. Hardcore changes, music changes, the world changes, but straight edge, it's still here, ever evolving, always unbreakable. In Boston, Salt Lake City, and hopefully the rest of the world, it has morphed from raw rebellion to a nuanced philosophy of self-control, activism, and yes, even spiritual growth. Because sometimes the most radical act isn't the fight itself. It's the choice to stay in control, to choose clarity over chaos, to keep your eyes open in a world intent on dulling your senses. That choice remains as defiant today as it did in those crusty basements of the 1980s. This has been Slack Signal X.